How's it going, everybody? This is Cameron White with White Light Astrology, giving you guys your April 2019 horoscope for Capricorn, Sun, and Rising. Thank you guys so much for being here and liking and sharing and commenting and subscribing. I love and appreciate every single one of you guys. Let's go ahead and just start going into what April is going to be about. However, I didn't do my March horoscopes last month. I didn't have the opportunity to. And there was two things I wanted to talk about that happened in March that are going to be kind of continuing on in April that we should discuss. One of them is going to be Venus is going to be in Pisces for the majority of April. Now, Venus did enter Pisces earlier on in March. However, for the majority of March, we had Venus in Aquarius. Now Venus is going to be in Pisces for the next couple of weeks. Venus is all about, of course, I'm sure if you've watched this before, I talk a lot about how Venus is, not only love and relationships, but value and money, as well as expression, what we are passionate about, what our hearts are wanting. Now, Venus has got to go into her sign of exaltation, where it's not necessarily her favorite place to be in, but it's like kind of like her best friend's house or somewhere that she really likes to be. Venus can express her, what's the best way to put it? She's all about, again, value, expression, beauty, I almost said simplicity. However, she goes into Pisces, she doesn't have boundaries or rules or regulations to work with, like how she could have, like Venus in Capricorn and Venus in Aquarius. It's definitely a lot more serious and structured versus Venus in Pisces. Venus gets to explore, and Venus also gets to experience and enjoy a little bit more of what she wants. She doesn't have to just, pick and choose out of, a small amount of options. There's limitless experiences, there's limitless, potentials, I think, with Venus being in Pisces. Now, this is going to be going through your third house, though, which is the most important part about this. While Venus is going through Pisces, she's in her exaltation, it's going to feel really nice. However, she will be in your third house, and the third house is all about communication, your mindset, how you write, how you speak. Has to do with siblings, has to do with neighbors and relatives in that, in kind of like that area. And as Venus is in your third house, I think a lot of this has to do with, all right, Venus is in Pisces, there's a lot of expression to, kind of explore. However, how are you utilizing that? The first house is who you are, the second house is what you have, and the third house is how you use it. So while Venus is in Pisces, how are you really utilizing that? Are you letting yourself get carried away in your environment and the beauty around it? Venus is also going to be on top of Neptune as well, so you can get really lost in that. Or are you going to be more expressive and or more caring with your expressiveness, a little bit more intimate with your expression? Your Capricorn, Sun, and Risings. It's not saying you're unemotional, but you're definitely not known for being emotional. Anyway, as we move forward, we also have on the last day of March, we have Mars going into Gemini, where Mars is going to be for the whole month of April. Mars is now going to be in your 6th house, so this is also quite a bit of a handful. Mars is this planet of action and drive, energy and tension, has a lot to do with anger and frustration and problems. It heats up, it inflammates, it's a dry planet. Now, Mars is going to go into this sign of Gemini, where it's a mutable sign, it's about changing, it's a dualistic sign. And the best way to put it is Mars in Gemini doesn't want to just focus on one thing, it's trying to multitask. Mars in Gemini is trying to not just be able to have its cake and eat it too. And while you have Mars in Gemini, you could be focusing on two different things. You could kind of spread yourself a little bit thin, wanting to focus on this and focus on that, looking at which one you want to choose more into. And that's going to be important, but what's important about it is that Mars is now going to be entering your 6th house. Now, this is Mars's joy, this is his favorite house to be in. And the 6th house is all about your work, your routine, your health, your habits, your sense of service, your employment, or if you have your own business, your employees would be in the 6th house. And as Mars goes through there, you may have some irritations and some problems with trying to get everything done that you want to get done in the small amount of time you got to do it. And while Mars is in your 6th house, like if you're focusing on your health and you want to get into better shape, great time to do that and try new things. But Mars going through your 6th house is also going to cause some issues and frustrations with getting things in schedule. You're going to be very hectic, going to be very busy, but it's going to be important to not just, spread yourself thin. The also important thing is don't just focus on one thing. While Mars is in Gemini, you want to be able to be adaptable with your energy and be able to go with the flow of the wind in this case. You know, the wind is always constantly changing which directions it's pushing in. Now, that's basically it, honestly. We kind of have to talk about everything else, but that's going to be kind of like the theme with Mars being in your 6th house. Now, as we get into April, the first big thing that we have is on April 5th, we have the new moon in Aries. And this is pretty enjoyable because this is going on in your 4th house of your home and your family life, your private life, where you center yourself and where you fixate yourself. Has a little bit to do with your parents and your heritage and things like that, but for the most part, home, family life, things of that nature. This new moon, new moons are when both of the luminaries are in the same sign, the sun and the moon are in the same sign, so it brings the focus to whatever that sign is and whatever house that's in. And with this being in Aries, you know, Aries season now, it's about identity, it's about initiating, it's about being acausal about stuff. This new moon in your 4th house is kind of like resetting the intentions and resetting exactly where you're directing your energy at within the context of your home, within the context of your family or in your private life. So that is going to be important. Now, the next big thing that we've got going on in April is on April 10th, we do have Jupiter stationing retrograde. Now, Jupiter has been, it's been in your 12th house now for a couple months. Jupiter going through your 12th house could be a little bit interesting because Jupiter is this planet of expansion. It's all about optimism, positivity. What is your belief? Where do you have faith? And Jupiter's in its home sign of Sagittarius, where it can expand and it can see and it has scope and range in order to see those things out. The only thing is, Jupiter's been through your 12th house of repressed parts of yourself, unacknowledged parts of yourself, things that were hidden or that you weren't aware of. And as Jupiter's been transiting this, a lot could have been popping up that you weren't necessarily ready for or expecting. Some beliefs that you have that you might have repressed or that you haven't acknowledged. Some viewpoints, the way that you see yourself or others or just life in general could have been brought up. Now, as Jupiter goes retrograde, the biggest thing about it is that it's basically kind of like as Jupiter's pushed itself forward, it's been showing you what's there, it's been, you know, expanding everything. Jupiter retrograde is kind of sitting back and, you know, thinking about what does this all mean to me? What do I believe about all of this stuff? And as Jupiter's starting to retrograde for the next couple of months in your 12th house, this is going to be a lot of deep inner reflection on what your guys' beliefs are. You know, if you're a Capricorn rising, you could be very stern, very sturdy, and very, you know, like this is the way things have to be. Jupiter in your 12th house is kind of enlightening you in some areas that can be easily ignored. So as it goes retrograde for the next couple months, basically everything that's been happening since Jupiter's been in Sagittarius, things that have came up, things that have been repressed that you've got to figure out what you believe in, this is going to be the time to reflect on all of that stuff. As we move forward, though, the next big thing that we've got is on April 16th, we have Mercury leaving shadow and entering the sign of Aries. And it's kind of a double whammy because Mercury's been in retrograde in Pisces for like 2 months now. I feel like I'm recording this with Mercury retrograde in Pisces still, so I'm just over it still. But anyway, as Mercury then leaves the last degree of Pisces, leaves shadow, it's finally done clearing up and figuring out whatever it needed to figure out during its retrograde. It now gets to start fresh. It now gets to move forward throughout the zodiac, and it starts right on not technically the first sign of the zodiac, but the first sign of the zodiac, and it goes right into Aries. Now, Mercury's been retrograde in your 3rd house. This has a lot to do with, you know, how you've communicated, how you've expressed things. But now as Mercury moves into Aries, into your 4th house, a lot of the theme of this, where Mercury is not only how we talk, how we communicate, what our mindset is and where our mind is really at with things. Mercury in Aries is very like taking things head on, speaking things like, you know, how exactly you feel, and, you know, saying it bluntly, saying it very even at times aggressively. And as Mercury goes into your 4th house, again, of your family and your home life and your private life, the idea of what Mercury is being, you know, smaller, minuscule things, or minuscule, I should say, I totally messed that up, as well as, you know, communication, a lot of that gets put into the place of your family and your home life. So a lot of this is going to deal with, you know, reaching out to your parents, talking to your family a little bit more, and keeping more of your mind more on where you live, how you live, and what's going on in that context. Now, the next day, we do have another really big thing, and that's, or no, not the next day, I skipped something. On the 19th, on April 19th, we're then going to have the 2nd full moon in Libra. And it's not too important that there's 2 full moons in Libra. What is important though is that it's just highlighting this axis in your chart again, like 3 different times with the new moon and both full moons. Now this full moon in Libra is going to be in your 10th house of your career, of your public vocation, your image, how people see you. And as we've had this new moon in Aries in your 4th house, Mercury's now in your 4th house, there's a lot of energy going on in your living situation. But in order to address your living situation, how you want things to be, how you want things to go, this full moon's got to illuminate, well, what are you doing with your life? You know, how are things looking like in your career? It's about balancing out, you know, your living situation with your career. Like, you know, work and home. It's 2 things that you kind of almost have to keep separated but balanced at the same time. And this full moon in Libra is really about going, if this is what you want to initiate, and if this is what you want to charge through with in the family and your home life and things like that, where do you need to bring more balance, and where do you need to bring in some more, not only help, but like support? Things like, you know, working together, delegating within the terms of your career. Maybe if you got a busy schedule all day long, you know, Mars is in your 6th house, this full moon's in your 10th house. If you got too much of a busy schedule to where it's taking you away from your home, like in your private life, like maybe you should delegate a little bit more of that work. But in essence, the full moon in Libra is just going to be highlighting where you need to balance some things out a little bit better within the context of your career and just kind of your life overall in general. As we move forward, though, the next day we have 2 big things going on 4/20. We have the sun going into Taurus as usual. This is going into your 9th house of, no, not your 9th house, your 5th house of children. 5th house is art, creativity, has a lot to do with, you know, music, all the things that you're passionate about. And as the sun goes to the 5th house, this is definitely going to be a lot more of an enjoyable time for you, like Taurus season usually is. But again, it's just the sun moving signs, whoop-de-doo, not a big deal. What is a big deal, though, is on that day, Venus will then also be moving into Aries, where Venus moves out of its sign of exaltation and moves into its sign of detriment. Venus wants to connect. She wants to bring things together. Venus in Aries is kind of like wanting to start a confrontation, like wanting to start a fight, getting excited about it. And I know that's very, you know, hypothetical in a sense. Like, if you have a Venus in Aries, don't take that seriously. But the idea of Venus being in Aries, where she wants to possess, she wants to control, she wants to initiate, she wants to have that power. And as Venus, this planet of beauty and love and things like that, is going into your 4th house, I think a lot of this has to come down to what's going on in your living situation. You know, what does your situation look like with your parents, with your, you know, ancestry or anything like that? And Venus being right here is definitely bringing up some, you know, like bravado, like, hey, you're feeling a little bit more confident about yourself. You're being able to center yourself more in what self-love looks like. That's another Venus and Aries thing. However, as Venus is in Aries going through your 4th house, a lot of the energy is going to be focused on what are your needs in the context of your living situation. Then the next thing that we have after that, just a couple days later on April 22nd, we have the sun conjoining Uranus. This is, now that Uranus is in your 5th house where it's going to be for the next 7 years, the sun hitting Uranus is definitely going to be like a clarity on what that's going to look like for the next better part of a decade. And as Uranus is in your 5th house where it's shaking things up in romance and love and art and creativity, the sun conjoining it right there is really just going to be a big light of like, yep, this is what this is looking like. It's not the biggest deal in the world, but April 22nd, keep your eyes and ears open for what's kind of going on in that 5th house area for you. Then the last couple things that we've got going on this month is on April 26th, we do have Mars squaring Neptune, which is something I've been hitting on all these horoscopes, but it is pretty important. You know, Mars is in your 6th house right now. You're doing a lot of work this month. You're getting a lot done. Like I said, it could be easy to spread yourself thin and be a little bit unfocused. The biggest thing, though, is that it squares Neptune. Neptune's in your 3rd house of, you know, again, communication, mindset, how you kind of go about things, how you utilize yourself. And Neptune can be very blurry and foggy. It's about illusion. It's about, you know, it can dilute the waters very easily. I kind of like to think of it like when you have like a bottle of vodka, like it's clear. But like, have you guys ever seen like Hypnotic? Like it's like this glittery, like blue and purple, you know, alcohol. It's like Neptune and Pisces. You can't see through it. Now Mars is going to be squaring Neptune, where Neptune can kind of put, you know, expectations. Neptune can make things very ideological based, like not so much based in fact and reality, but what we hope things are supposed to be. As Mars is going through Gemini and you're doing all these things and you're busy, the biggest thing is to not have these premeditated expectations or judgments on a certain situation. Where Neptune in Pisces is kind of like making this weird thing around your communication and your mindset. Be careful about with you working your ass off this month with Mars and Gemini, not getting carried away with the expectations you could set on doing this, like what doing this work is going to result in or what it's going to manifest into. It's going to get really easy to be like, oh, if I do this and this, I'll get this reward and everything's going to be super easy. Usually everything in life is not super easy. So be careful about, where your ideology is being placed at this moment. But as Mars does square Neptune, it's just about being clear about like not holding expectations, not holding judgments, and just if you're working and you're busy and you want to dip your feet in other waters and kind of see where exactly you could expend your energy, don't hold an expectation on what that's supposed to look like and let it come to you. And then the last two things that I want to talk about is also on April 26th, we do have Pluto stationing retrograde. Not a big deal. What is a big deal, though, is the South Node has been on top of Pluto now for about the majority of April at this point. And as the South Node's been over Pluto, this has been over your first house. I'm a super late Sagittarius rising, so I've had Pluto, I've had Saturn go over my ascendant. I know what this has been like for you guys. Pluto's now stationing retrograde. The South Node's been over it. Pluto's kind of like, to sum it all up, it's kind of like this idea of these fears and these anxieties that we can have around changing the infrastructure on this deep level that we need to. And in your terms, in your case, because you're a Capricorn rising, around your personality, around your sense of self, around your body, around your image. There's a lot of change that needs to go on. And the South Node going over Pluto is kind of like being able to let go of that fear and anxiety, getting ready for the change. It's kind of like actually demolishing the building, Yeah, sure, we don't know exactly where all the piece of bricks are going to exactly fall, but we got to bring it down at some point. Now, Pluto will be stationing retrograde at that point, not the biggest deal. But then the last day of April, on April 30th, we are going to have the South Node go over Saturn, as Saturn is right next to Pluto at this time. And this is important because Saturn's going over your ascendant right now. Saturn's in your first house. I can't tell you how much that shit sucks. Like, it's hard. It's rough. It's challenging. Saturn's being like, where do you need to concentrate your energy? Where do you need to get serious and real and raw? And as the South Node goes over Saturn, it's kind of like, rather than seeing these limitations and seeing these walls that can hold you back from that self-expression, from being able to obtain what it is that you're trying to obtain or create in a realistic manner, the South Node going over Saturn is saying, let's not look at these as walls anymore, but let's look at this as support. Let's look at this as, it's not about being afraid of these walls. It's not about looking at where it limits you in, but it's about looking at it, where does it support you, and how can you let it support you moving forward? And that's basically what I got for you guys. That's what April's looking like. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching and liking and sharing and commenting and subscribing. I love and appreciate every single one of you guys, and I'll be seeing you next month.